Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Today's story isn't about revenge. It's about silence, and how terrifying silence can become when it's the only thing left between two people who used to love each other. She was humming in the kitchen, barefoot, making coffee, like she hadn't just gutted our marriage with a single sentence the night before. "It's not my job to make you happy." That's what she said, out loud, without blinking. She had said it while folding a bath towel. The most ordinary, boring, beige towel. It felt absurd that something so world-ending could come from such a casual act. But maybe that's how the worst things happen, quietly. She hadn't even raised her voice. She just stated it like it was math. And now, the next morning, she was humming. She reached for her favorite mug, white ceramic with chipped gold letters that said, "Queen of Everything." I didn't move, didn't speak. I just watched her pour the coffee and stir it with that tiny silver spoon that only she used. And something inside me unplugged. I didn't feel anger. I didn't cry. I didn't scream or beg. I just felt this strange hollowness, like someone had opened a door inside my chest and let all the air out. She sipped her coffee, made a mm sound, and started scrolling through her phone like I wasn't there. Like I was the refrigerator or the sink. Furniture. Background noise. Disposable. And that's when I knew I had been reduced to an appliance in my own marriage. Useful, quiet, predictable, replaceable. So I did something unpredictable. I stood up, took my keys, and walked out the front door without saying a word. No note, no explanation, no drama. I went to a small hotel 10 miles outside town. One of those roadside places with old wallpaper and a humming ice machine in the hallway. I turned off my phone, sat on the edge of the bed, and stared at the floral-patterned curtains while the world spun on without me. She didn't call. Not that night. Not the next. And you'd think that would hurt the most. But it wasn't until I logged into our shared streaming account and saw her profile picture had been changed from our wedding photo to just her. That's when I understood. She had already deleted me, long before I walked out. And yet, she wasn't ready for what came next. Because when I stopped caring, I didn't just disappear from the apartment. I started slipping away from every part of the life I once built around her. And soon, she'd feel that emptiness too. The third morning, I woke up in that faded motel room with the thin curtains and the distant sound of trucks passing by. And for a moment, I forgot I was gone. I reached for my phone out of habit, only to remember it was still powered off, face down on the dusty nightstand. I didn't want to look at any messages or the absence of them. I wasn't ready for that hollow confirmation. But something odd started to happen. In the silence, I began hearing things that had been drowned out for years. My own thoughts, my own exhaustion, my own grief. I realized I had been emotionally starving and calling it devotion. That day, I went back to the apartment, but not to talk to her. I didn't even knock. I still had my key. She was in the living room, barefoot again, laughing on a video call. Her voice was high-pitched, playful, the version of her that strangers found charming. Not the clipped, sharp-tongued woman I had lived with for years. She didn't hear me enter. I stood in the hallway, just watching her reflection in the mirror above the console table. And then I saw it, on the couch behind her. A hoodie. Not mine. Her laughter got quieter, more private. She tilted her head and said, "You should have stayed over." He didn't even come home. I left without making a sound. I didn't need proof. I didn't need to see texts or confront her with questions I already knew the answers to. That one sentence had all the weight of betrayal packed into it. Back at the motel, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I wasn't angry, not in the way people expect. I didn't want to scream or destroy something. I felt more like a balloon with a slow leak, just deflating inch by inch until there was nothing left to float. I kept thinking about all the ways I had tried to please her. How I had bent myself into smaller and smaller versions of who I used to be, just so she could have more room to breathe. And in the end, she still chose someone else to exhale around. And yet, despite everything, I didn't want to hurt her. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted her to feel it. To feel what life looks like when someone who once cared so deeply suddenly doesn't anymore. So I made a list. A quiet one. Everything I did for her, every part of the machine I had become. I would stop. Slowly, strategically, the autopilot would shut down until she realized she was no longer being carried. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to evaporate, one chore at a time, one favor at a time, one silence at a time. And the first thing I removed was my name from our shared lease. I didn't expect the look on her face when she found the updated lease agreement on the kitchen counter. Not a note, not a dramatic speech, just a thin stack of papers. The only signature missing was hers. Mine was already inked in black, right next to the box that said, "Removal from tenancy." She stood there holding the document like it was written in a language she didn't understand. Her brows knit together slowly, the fake confidence draining from her expression like color from a bad painting. She glanced around the apartment as if to see what else might be missing, some metaphorical limb I had already amputated from her life. But I was still there, still sleeping in the same bed, still making coffee in the morning, still breathing in the same space. And yet, everything felt colder. She didn't say anything that day. She just folded the lease and tucked it back where I left it. No eye contact, no questions, just silence. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. It was the beginning of her confusion and my quiet retreat. I kept playing the part of the houseplant husband. I existed, but I no longer bloomed. I didn't ask where she was going when she left the house dressed in perfume I hadn't smelled in months. I didn't cook anymore. Didn't offer to pick up anything from the store. When she got the flu, I didn't rush in with soup and medicine. I just left a bottle of cold pills on the bathroom sink and went for a walk. That walk led me to an old bookstore I hadn't visited in years. I used to love that place. Before the marriage became a job. Before I became a background character in my own life. I wandered through the aisles like a stranger in my own past. That's when I saw a woman crying in the poetry section. Quietly, trying to hide it behind the shelves. Her vulnerability struck me so suddenly, I almost left. But instead, I handed her a tissue from my coat and said nothing. She smiled. Didn't thank me. Just nodded. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt seen. Not as someone's husband, not as a disappointment, but just as a human being. Someone who still existed. I went back home that evening, unsure if I felt lighter or lonelier. Inside, the lights were off. No dinner on the table, of course. No, how was your day? Just the blue glow of her phone screen lighting up her face as she scrolled through something, her feet tucked under her on the couch like a teenager ignoring her father. I walked past her. She didn't look up. And in that moment, I knew I had officially become invisible. But the thing about being invisible is that it gives you freedom. You can observe, plan, shift. So the next morning, I called the bank. I sat on hold with the bank for 16 minutes. Long enough to watch a full cycle of our washing machine spin our shared laundry into one wet blur. I hadn't even told her I was transferring half the joint account into a new private one. I didn't need to. It was still my name on the paycheck, and I wasn't breaking any laws. Just cutting oxygen to a system that never noticed I was the one keeping it breathing. The woman on the phone asked if I wanted paper statements mailed or if I preferred email. I chose paper. I wanted something I could hold. Something real. Something that didn't vanish behind a glowing screen like every emotion I ever tried to express in that apartment. By the end of the week, I had updated my payroll. New deposit. New path. Quiet independence. I didn't change anything flashy. I left the bills auto-paid, the subscriptions running. I wasn't trying to crash her world, just remove myself from it. Inch by inch. Until she noticed the empty outline where I used to be. I started staying out later, wandering. I'd sit in the park and people watch until the sun dipped. I'd grab dinner alone, read articles on my phone I used to bookmark and never read. I even took a long, slow walk through the art museum on a Tuesday afternoon. I hadn't done that since my 20s. For a moment, I remembered what it felt like to be curious about something again. Not just tired all the time. Back home, she noticed I was leaving dishes in the sink. Small rebellion, sure, but it mattered. She started making these sarcastic remarks under her breath. Guess the house-cleaning fairies quit. Or, it's not cute to mope forever. I didn't reply. I just kept peeling back my presents like wallpaper no one bothered to maintain. But one night, things shifted. I came home and found her sitting at the dining table with wine. 2 glasses, one untouched. "You've been different," she said. I didn't respond. She pushed the second glass toward me. "I'm trying here, Erwin." It almost made me laugh. Trying? Now, after months of being treated like a stray dog who overstayed his welcome? Still, I sat down. Not for her. For me. I wanted to see what she'd say when she no longer had control of the conversation, when I wasn't chasing her approval anymore. She sighed. "Look, I know I've been distant. I get it. You're upset. But relationships go through phases. It doesn't mean you get to just check out. I stared at her for a long time. You said it's not your job to make me happy. You made that very clear. She shifted in her seat. Well, it's not. But that doesn't mean I don't care. That contradiction hung in the air like fog. Thick, confusing, dishonest. I leaned back. I'm not angry anymore. I just stopped expecting anything. And you know what terrified her? Not that I was mad, but that I meant it. That I was really, truly done trying. She blinked, looked away, and that's when I saw something new in her. Not guilt, not regret, fear. Because she finally realized that emotional distance isn't always a threat, it can be permanent. 2 days passed after that awkward wine conversation. She didn't bring it up again. Didn't ask how I felt. Didn't ask where I went when I stayed out late. But she started watching me more closely, out of the corner of her eye when I walked past. Like someone monitoring an animal they once thought was harmless, but now weren't so sure about. I didn't give her anything to hold on to. No anger. No begging. Just stillness. Cold, unmovable stillness. She began overcompensating. Made dinner twice. Even lit a candle once. Not for me, of course, just felt like it, she said. I ate in silence. She asked if I wanted to watch something together afterward, and I said I was tired. That was true. I was tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix. I could feel her frustration simmering beneath the surface. She wasn't used to being ignored. Her usual games weren't working. She had thrived off my attention, my validation, my constant need to keep her happy, even when she barely threw me scraps of affection in return. But now, I had removed the stage lights. She was left performing in the dark. One morning, I left my phone unlocked on purpose. Set it face up on the counter while I showered. I knew she wouldn't be able to resist. Sure enough, when I returned, it had moved a few inches from where I left it. Classic Callista, curious only when she feared I might be slipping through her fingers. I watched her carefully for the rest of the day. She was calmer, almost smug, like she found what she was looking for. But what she didn't realize was that I had left that phone blank on purpose. Deleted every real trace of what I'd been planning. Because I had started keeping a journal. Not a digital one. A real, ink-on-paper journal. I kept it at the bottom of a shoebox in the garage behind old paint cans. In it, I was documenting everything. Not for revenge, not even for clarity, but because I needed something to remind myself that I hadn't imagined it all. That the coldness, the distance, the way she weaponized indifference, it wasn't just in my head. And writing it down helped me remember how I got here. Like the time she laughed at me for crying when my dog died. Or how she once told her friend that being with me was safe, but boring, while I was literally sitting in the next room. Or how, for our last anniversary, she gave me a card that read, "To a great roommate," and thought it was hilarious. These weren't isolated moments. They were a pattern, a slow corrosion. And now I was standing in the ruins, wondering why I kept pretending we still lived in a palace. That weekend, I left again. Didn't tell her where. Took nothing but my keys and that journal. I drove to a lake 2 hours away, sat on a bench overlooking the water, and read my own words back to myself. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to dip and the air to go sharp. When I got home, she was pacing. "Where were you?" she asked, voice strained. I shrugged. "Out." She narrowed her eyes. "You think this is funny? Punishing me with silence?" I looked at her calmly. "You told me it wasn't your job to make me happy, so I stopped hiring you for it." Her jaw clenched. I walked past her, went into the bedroom, and shut the door behind me. Not slammed, just closed. And for the first time, she didn't follow. That night, I slept like a stone. Not because I was at peace, but because I was numb. I didn't dream. I didn't toss or turn. I just shut down, like a computer finally overheating and powering off. And when I woke up, everything in the apartment felt too quiet. Not the usual quiet we'd both learned to live with, but a heavy kind, like the air before a thunderstorm. She hadn't slept in the bed. I walked out into the living room and found her curled up under a blanket on the couch, staring blankly at the turned-off TV. She didn't say anything when she saw me, just watched, like I was an exhibit behind glass. I went about my morning routine, wordless as ever. But when I opened the fridge, I saw something strange. A small, scribbled sticky note taped to a Tupperware container. It read, "Lunch, if you're not too proud." For a split second, I almost softened. Almost. But then I remembered the months I made her meals while she sighed at her phone and said nothing. The dinners I planned, the holidays I tried to salvage, the way she rolled her eyes every time I reached out for a moment of connection. So I took the note, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash without opening the container. I didn't do it to hurt her. I did it because I no longer wanted scraps dressed up as effort. The truth is, something in her had shifted, but not for the reasons you'd expect. It wasn't guilt. It was fear, not of losing me, but of losing the utility I had always provided. The man who paid the bills, cleaned up, took care of everything. Her invisible emotional janitor. She began poking around after that, testing for cracks, asking if I wanted to go see a movie, leaving the bathroom door open while she showered, like old times, as if flashing skin could undo years of emotional frostbite. But I wasn't the same anymore. I didn't respond to old bait. That's when she made a mistake. Late one evening, I caught her texting someone. The way she tilted the phone, the rushed locking of the screen when I walked in, it wasn't subtle. She set the phone face down and crossed her arms like nothing had happened. I sat down across from her at the kitchen table. "Are you seeing someone?" I asked. She scoffed, like the idea offended her. "No. God. Why would you even? I heard you weeks ago. On the call. You said he didn't come home. You said you wished someone else had stayed over." She blinked once. Froze. "You weren't supposed to hear that," she whispered. But I did. And there it was, confirmation. Finally. She couldn't lie fast enough this time. She tried to speak again, probably to rewrite the story, but I held up my hand. "I don't care anymore," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not hurt. I'm not even surprised. I just needed to hear you say it." She looked smaller suddenly, not in size, but in presence. Like the image she had built of herself in our relationship had shattered, and she was standing in the broken pieces, realizing I wasn't going to help her clean them up this time. "I didn't mean for it to get so far," she said, almost defensively. I felt ignored, like you weren't seeing me." I nodded slowly. "And now you know what that feels like." I stood, grabbed my jacket, and left again. No destination. I just walked. Blocks and blocks in the dark, trying to remember who I had been before I started pouring myself into someone who never wanted to be filled. The night air bit harder than usual as I walked, my hands stuffed deep in my coat pockets, the silence ringing louder in my ears with every step. It wasn't the kind of silence that comes with peace. It was the aftermath kind, the one that lingers after something's already been broken beyond repair. I wasn't thinking about where I was going, just that I needed distance from her, from the place we used to call home, from the person I used to be when I believed she still loved me. I ended up back at the lake. The same bench. The same crooked tree that leaned over the water like it was listening. I sat there, staring at the reflection of the moon on the surface, and tried to remember the last time I felt proud of who I was inside that marriage. The truth hit hard. It had been years. I had slowly become a version of myself I didn't recognize, constantly compromising, always giving, rarely receiving. I thought that's what commitment looked like. But all it did was teach her how much she could take without ever needing to give something back. When I got home that night, she was awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, waiting for me. She looked tired, not just physically, but hollowed out in a way I hadn't seen before. "I don't want us to end like this," she said quietly. I didn't answer. She tried again. "Can we talk? Really talk?" I sat down in the chair across the room. "Then talk." And she did. For the first time in months, maybe even years, she talked. She admitted the affair, said it had ended weeks ago, that it was meaningless, that she was looking for something she didn't even understand. She said she missed me, missed how I used to look at her like she mattered. Said she thought I'd always be there, no matter what. That part, that's what stuck with me. I thought you'd always be there. That was the problem. She had built her comfort around my constancy. Assumed I'd keep showing up, keep loving, keep fixing, no matter how cold or careless she became. And I don't blame her entirely. I trained her to believe that. With every second chance, every quiet forgiveness, I taught her that my love had no boundaries, that I'd rather be stepped on than walk away. But I was different now. "I'm not angry," I said. "I just don't trust you anymore. And without trust, there's nothing left to fix." She wiped her eyes and reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold it either. Her fingers curled over mine, desperate and trembling. "I can change," she whispered. I nodded slowly. "Maybe you can. But I already did." We sat there in silence for a while. No shouting, no breakdowns, just a long, empty pause between two people who finally saw the wreckage clearly. I could feel her panic growing with every second I didn't fold. She had always known how to push me into softening. But now my silence was no longer a pause. It was a boundary. She started listing all the things she'd do differently. Therapy, honesty, even moving out if that's what I needed. And as I listened, I realized that everything she was offering now was everything I had begged for when I still cared. But it was too late. I stood slowly, looked around the room, our room, for what might be the last time. "I'll stay on the couch tonight," I said. "You'll have the weekend to pack." Her lips parted. "Wait, that's it? After everything?" "Yes," I said, "because everything is exactly what got us here." She didn't scream, didn't cry. She just sat there, stunned, like her entire plan had collapsed in front of her and she hadn't prepared a backup. I had spent years waiting for that moment, the one where she'd finally realize what she'd done, where the weight of her indifference would hit her like a train. And now that it was here, I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. The next 2 days passed like a quiet farewell. She packed without drama, folding clothes into boxes with robotic hands. She left behind little things, her old scarf, the mug I got her on our first trip, a pair of earrings I once saved up for. She didn't say goodbye when she left, just walked out the door and didn't look back. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel left behind. I felt like I had finally caught up with myself. I spent the following weeks rebuilding, not just the apartment, but my peace. I donated the couch we used to sit on in silence, repainted the walls, bought a coffee table that didn't wobble. The silence now didn't hurt, it healed. It gave me space to breathe, to reflect, to remember who I was before I became someone begging for crumbs of affection. Funny thing is, I started doing things just for me. Signed up for a cooking class, reconnected with an old friend from college who'd moved back into town, even adopted a rescue dog, a nervous little mutt named Mervin who follows me everywhere like I'm the most important person in the world. And maybe the biggest surprise? I'm happy, not in some dramatic, movie montage way, but in the quiet, subtle way you feel when you drink your coffee without dread. When your home becomes a sanctuary again. When you realize that love, real love, should never feel like something you have to earn just to survive. So no, she was right. It wasn't her job to make me happy, but it also wasn't my job to stay where I wasn't loved. And now, I finally understand that. If you've made it this far, thank you. You've been on the Reddit Confessions channel. Let us know in the comments. What moment in history do you think changed the world forever, but started in complete silence?